I'll call the meeting to order, and if we can do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. We have Rolando Roli Cáceres not present, Cindy Cantu not present, Daniel Sadania, Daniela Sarapaz not present, Mike Baron not present, or Jean Belmares. On the Parks and Rec side, we have Victor Vasquez present, Joe Baron not present, myself am present, and Ruben Bazan. The third not present. So what I'm going to recommend is that let's Anita do her presentation, and then we'll do the public comments. So that way, once you hear it. So, Anita, turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So the proposed amendment before you is being brought forth. Initially, Initially, the ordinance was created in 2008, and based on information in 2008 is how it was created. The population in Laredo was 176,576 in 2008 compared to the 257,602. Currently, we charge $45,000 an acre of land to acquire. This is the cash in lieu based on the ordinance information. Currently, we use $80,000, 384, which is a metric that was used back in 2008, which is an average cost of what it cost us to actually create a park. Current cost to develop 1 acre now is $156,960. So the rationale for the increase in fees, the cost of park equipment has gone up beyond the cost of inflation since 2008. Currently, the average cost for a fully built playground is between $80,000 and $550,000. On average, the cost to develop 2.5 acre parks are between $660,000 to $1.5 million. With current fees, we collect enough to build perhaps a third of that park. Population has grown, as we just discussed. We have a current level of service of 6.5 acres of parkland per 1,000 individuals. This is unfortunately not the case for the entire community. We have recreation gaps within the city, and our challenge will be to either purchase or obtain additional land to develop in those gap areas through new development. So, amendments to the parkland dedication. So what we propose is to include language that speaks to increase in density of residential area, add the language plat or site plan to the current ordinance where master plan is not required. Multifamily requirements for parkland and improvements to be readdressed. This is for the purpose of identifying property that is currently zoned as commercial property. And at that point, when it comes to the Parks and Recreation Department, the Parkland Education Ordinance doesn't kick in because it is commercial property. However, when that property is then used to create multifamily, which it can also be used as, at that point, it comes back to the Parks and Recreation Department to readdress because of the increase in density. Developer to construct park and get credit for fair market value of amenities. We'll discuss that a little bit more in a second, because that is of great import. Requirements for trust agreement for multifamily agreements. Increase timeline for park construction to 36 months. Increase the park improvement fee to $1,200 per dwelling unit. Increase in acres required from 1 acre to 2.5. Adding Appendix B to describe amenities as desired. So, one of the things that we wanted to discuss was currently the Parks Department is actually constructing the parks. You know, not very often that a developer comes in and wants to actually construct them. Normally, they'll pay the park improvement fee, and then they'll turn it over to the Parks Department, and then the Parks Department has to go out and contract individuals, get 3 bids, and, do the whole procurement process. And so one of the things in the amendment that is built in that we're proposing is to allow the developer credit for actually building the park. And what I mean by that is the developer can actually build something, parking lot, asphalt for basketball courts, etc., at a lower rate than what the Parks Department can. The city, because of the procurement processes and the bond insurance, bid insurance, etc., it does raise the prices. And so what ends up happening is the total cost for an item, for a project, for any type of amenity, is much higher than it would cost the developer himself. And so what we're proposing is coming up with a schedule of amenities based on the size of the park, and identifying with specifications that this is what is needed in this particular area, and we would ask that the developer build them. And if the credit that is to be given for that particular park, based on how many units are in there on the development, let's say that the total park improvement fees would be $800,000. So what the amendment is stating is that if you can build it for $400,000, you'd still get the $800,000 credit. It doesn't matter to us how much it costs you to do it. What we want to see is the actual amenity put in place. And so in this way, you could actually have the entire park built for, as I said, half the cost. And so that is one of the proposals that we're doing, that's in the amendment right now. And so that in a nutshell is what the amendment speaks to, raising the cost to $1,200 as well as asking for 2.5.
I know that previously when we met, it was something that was up for discussion. And of course, that this subcommittee would look into having making the recommendation of the 1,200. And then we heard also from developers at our last meeting. And at the same time, we'd also send to council what would be a recommendation for, that they'd have to find for alternative funding. That's also that we have to be mindful so that Parks is able to find creative ways to fund the department, which we know it's a department that carries a lot of the cost of operation, has a large operational cost budget, so something that we have to look into. Based on these numbers, and Ms. Stanley, as we're going to recommend 1,200, that's still lower than what other cities are charging, correct?
Correct. We did an assessment based on other surrounding cities, and we are much lower than several. This is what we feel, though, we could use. We can work with this number. And so, we were trying to get other cities' input to create a baseline. But we are absolutely lower.
Okay, any other comment? Or anything else you want to add to the presentation, or?
Also, if I may, I do recall how Ms. Elizabeth from the Parks Department also last time presented to us a breakdown of what it costs the city to install some of these things that obviously get worn out, benches, grills and stuff like that, which in the cost that we're at now, it would, it's not even close to what it would cost to replace some of the amenities that we have currently in place right now. This,
Absolutely, we're just, a water fountain, $2,500 to $4,500, one water fountain. And so benches, tables, the cost has gone up. And it's gone up higher than the cost of normal inflation. And so what we could pay in 2008, which was the $80,000, and that was a feasible number, we could work with that number. In these days, these dollars, that $80,000 doesn't go very far. So we have parks that there hasn't been any improvement to the amenity. There hasn't been any additional amenities to the park, simply because the funds aren't there for that.
and with that is also, Mr. Martinez, that this is something that we're discussing right now. I think that we just didn't come up with the 1,200 number out of thin air. It's just something that we evaluated, that obviously we do think that it would be reasonable. However, we have also to be able to give our colleagues who are not present here today, but give also the courtesy of that input. And we did discuss and then the $1,200 amount, and then also to being hearing from developers, which obviously this would be a cost that would be then passed down to the consumer, who would ultimately be purchasing the home. We also want it to be fair in the sense that something that we discussed last time, that we want it to be fair, where taking into consideration a percentage of acreage land, and I know you mentioned that, Ms. Stanley, as well, whether if you're compacting more lots in an acre, for example, in South Laredo, that there might be smaller lots in comparison to North Laredo, where they're larger lots. That we can also work on a possible scale that we would make it fair in sense for also for the developer and the consumer ultimately.
Correct. That is one of the options that we're looking at, and that is a direct result of speaking with some of our developers. And what we would also like to propose in the amendment is the possibility of incorporating a scale based on how many units fit in 1 acre in the property that you're developing. And if it's this number to this number, on a scale basis, and if it's a certain number to, what was it?
It was a high, medium, and low density.
Correct. So the whole intent is to work with density. So if it was a higher density that was being created, which normally happens in certain areas of the city, in the South Laredo and on Mines Road area, you have a higher density per acre. And so the park improvement fee would be at a lower rate because more houses are going into those properties. And so you have also your mid-scale and then your high. In certain areas of the city, you may have 5 or 6 units per acre. And so, that is taken into consideration. And so before we do the final amendment and take it to council, all of these issues are going to be placed in there. And it's going to be a matter of, this is what we're proposing, and ask council for their direction.
I haven't seen a date as to once we finalize what is a date that we'd be aiming to implement it. Would it be the start, let's say if it's, for example, if it's done sometime in the next month, it'll be taken to council, then council acts on it, but then that would be...
It still needs, it would go into as an introductory because it's going to be increasing fees. It goes in as an introductory and then it has to go for a final, and then it's not implemented for 60 days, I believe.
Okay.
So it's going to be, before it's actually enacted, implemented, we're looking at maybe March, April, so we can get all of the information from developers, from the community, what their input is. And like I said, we've received some good input, and we've been able to incorporate some of those ideas into various options that we can definitely add into the amendment.
Great. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Nothing further.
We're good?
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'll invite you, the public comments, Mr. Reese, and just remember, citizens must identify themselves to the committee and advise them of the intent to speak. They will be recognized during the public comments prior to the start of the meeting, but we brought the presentation first. The comments should be delivered in a professional manner. No derogatory remarks will be permitted. Thank you so much for being here, Mr.
Jesus Reese, for the record, I'm the owner of Reese Homes, single-family home builder, and really we focus on the first-time home buyer. That's, ever since I left Armadillo back in 2002, our average home size has been about 1,400 square feet, below the regular median home size in Laredo, and predominantly under 1,400 square feet. Typically right now I'm doing 1,400 square feet only because everything else is so expensive that it's hard to be able to sell something on 1,000 square feet, although I've got a few of them. And I am doing some land development. As I told you guys at the last meeting that wasn't a formal meeting, I was part of the original committee that drafted the first Parks Ordinance back in 2008. And the way the ordinance was set up, it's really based on a level of service. So I heard some rumblings about, some developments paying less and some developments paying more because the lots are bigger or the lots are less. But really, at the end of the day, we went based on a study that was done by, I think it was Carter Burgess, and back then it was, a level of service of household, the number of households using it, 1,000 households, 1 acre per 1,000 households. So what's happened in there as a result of that, and back then our density was less. And, I don't want to disagree, but what I've seen is that even on the north side, because of all the inflation, now you see developments that are in the San Isidro area that are R1A lots, where the minimum used to be 6,000 square foot lots. They brought it down now to 4,500 square foot lots, which then increases the density. Now, what does that do to the formula as far as the numbers are concerned? What it does is instead of getting like, $80,000 in fee, for that surrounding area, now you're getting more because the density is higher. And back then, like today, some of the comments are, no, things are very expensive. No, things are very expensive. And, one of the observations that was done back then is that you're trying to put too many amenities in the acreage. Too many amenities in the acreage. In other words, and when the fees were put in place were to have, adequate amenities for outdoor activities. And I remember, talking about this. It was called a Mister back then. You weren't there. It was Carlos. It was Mr. We're gonna fly. Mr. Pescador was there, and they had this arm deal, right? And all it did was, you'd walk in there and you'd get missed. And the darn thing was it was called a Mister, and it was $8,000. And it's like, Mister, But the thing is, what are the basic needs that we need for a park? what's the utilization of the park? And then what are the wants? In other words, just like anything else, you know, what do I need for transportation? You know, do I need a Mercedes for transportation? Or do I need, you know, my Jeep that I use for transportation? For me personally, right? Okay, for the family, okay, well, we have a different vehicle for the family. But by choice, right? But what's happening right now is that the consumer just is choked everywhere. Is choked everywhere. And we're taking this ordinance from $800 or whatever it is today.
It's at 300.
Yeah, the cost is basically, based on the 45,000, it's basically $500 per household, right? Now, given that the household size is less, right? So per population, now you've got less people living in the house than we did before. So it takes more households to get 1,000 population. So what's happening is just the mere fact of just the population shift, you're getting now 576 per acre, 576 bucks, and it's going from 576 to approximately 2,069. So we're making a huge jump. If you don't consider the household size and you go from the original ordinance to this proposed ordinance with a number of households, we went from $500 to $2,000. And we all know that, you know, $1 of sales is not equal to $1 of cost. For a developer, a builder to be able to pass the cost to the consumer, it ends up being another 30% because of sales commissions, interest carry, borrowing money at the bank, interest rates, you know. In other words, it's not dollar for dollar.
Correct.
Now, if you take that 2,900, the 2,000 that gets translated to approximately 2,900, that's basically $28 a month payment for the citizen for the next 30 years, and we're just making housing inaccessible. And this ordinance, I think, needs to be extremely thought out. I went through the ordinance, and there's much more in that ordinance than the money. There's more in that ordinance than the money. In other words, I was here at a I don't know if you were here at the PNZ meeting for the zoning changes. Were you there?
No, I wasn't there.
Okay. And I don't know how the fee in lieu, I mean, I heard gaps from staff that there's a lot of gaps, but I don't know how many projects there's been a fee in lieu of land. And my question is that creating the gaps? I don't know, right? Because I haven't delved into this, and obviously since 2008. But what I saw at that planning and zoning meeting was a family from the Wright Ranch area that was complaining that they don't have a park. I mean, maybe, is there a park over there in the Wright Ranch area?
It's planned, but the developer hasn't given it to us yet.
Okay, so, and how many homes are out there in the Wright Ranch?
It's about 800.
So what happened to following the ordinance?
We've been trying to press the developer to do it, and we've just been delayed.
And what about all the fees?
Okay,
The point I'm trying to make is this, okay? Is that the consumer wants his park close to where they make the payments. In other words, because that's what's happening. In other words, we're passing it on to the consumer. The consumer goes out there and purchases a home, and he wants to be able to either walk to his park, he wants to be able to, a short drive. And the way the ordinance is being changed, you know, the devil's in the details. So when you read, the changes in there, they're taking the word neighborhood out of everywhere.
I can chime in on that briefly.
Yeah.
We are following a recommendation of a master plan, which the reason we are here today is also exposes to the expense that Parks has picked up, because there's a lot of pocket parks that have been developed through the years, small pocket parks, neighborhood parks. So in not necessarily doing away with that, but doing now what's called area parks. Is that the correct term?
It sounds like you're taking it out completely.
Area parks. No.
Because the word neighborhood is out everywhere.
Yeah, no.
Just because, sorry to chime in right here, it's just that we have a lot of these pocket parks, which is if you go down International, that have that small park. But what people want to start seeing are the bigger parks. Like everyone goes to North Central Park. And that's what, I guess, the master plan that we're looking at is, they don't want these small pocket parks, they want these big ones. And yes, you can put a small pocket park, but how much is it gonna cost Parks and Rec to go and hit and maintain all these parks? So what we're trying to do is give the citizens a bigger park, give them more land where they can go, they have stuff for the kids, they have the basketball courts. If you go to that pocket park, all you can do is just walk around the trail, or I think there's just a couple of swings and a basketball court. But people want the big walking trail, people want the big area. Now, one of the things, and you're putting your developer hat on, is you would say, this is a subdivision I want to build, so this is what I'm looking at. This is the way I want my park to look like. Because if you have a real nice park, you know, people are going to be buying homes there. If you notice, with the North Central Park, the homes there have been selling because the amenity is, I just walk across the street, I don't have to drive, I can cycle over there, and you have, I guess, a bike path, so you can ride your bike around that area, and I think that's what the people are looking for. They're not looking for those small pocket parks. And what we're trying to do is come up with a solution that, number one, it's been 16 years since the fees have gone up. And as you all know, the price of a hamburger 16 years ago is not the same price what we're paying right now. And what we need to do is, number one, everyone complains that, hey, the parks, they need to go cut the grass, or they need to go do this. Well, how are we supposed to do it when we don't have the staff or the funds to staff to I guess, maintain the parks adequately?
And to add, Mr. Martinez, with that is that the area parks, the ultimate goal is also that they're connected by trails, by accessible trails, walking trail, bike trail, that eventually you can go from a South Laredo Park to a North Laredo Park through a trail. And that's incorporated in a master plan. This master plan is a suggestion for the next 10, 20 years. For the 10 years, it's a 10-year master plan for the city. This is something that I saw since I first joined the Parks Board back in 2017. So it's something that pre-pandemic has been put together. Members of the community were brought up, and useful information was contributed to the park section of the master plan, because that's what I can speak of, because that's what I was a part of. And it is doing away little by little with what's called those pocket parks, which eventually, hopefully a replica of Central Park, a replica of Independence Hill Parks. Those are parks that are very utilized. I hear all the time people going out there to Central Park and saying, I can't jog there at a certain time because it's people are biking, people are out there. That's what we want. Ultimately, we want them to enjoy our parks. But of course, like everything else, it's a cost to maintain it. Of course, it'd be easier for the Parks Department, for the city to do that through would be called an area parking. Father McNoby over in Mines Road area, also very utilized, very popular. And to Mr. Martinez's point is that it has been 16 years, 2008 through 2024. The proposed rate right now of $1,200 is a 25% increase of those $300 of total increase of $900, which is a 1.56% per year. So that's not bad in 16 years. They're having an increase of 1.56% per year. However, this is not the final recommendation that we have. Obviously, we're giving the courtesy to the developers, obviously, and then to the other members of the committee before a final vote on this is taken. But this is kind of what we've ended up with on that ballpark number of 1,200, thinking that it would be
Yeah, but the
beneficial.
total cost is $2,092, and it's a drastic increase because number one, you're doubling the amount of land, no?
From 1 to 2.5.
Acres, yeah, exactly. So it's not only the $1,200, but it's the amount of land per thousand of population is also increasing. And, you know, a lot of the stuff that I'm hearing is, you know, that there's no money on the maintenance and operation. That becomes a taxing issue and in other words, it's a broader issue. This, you know, charging somebody $1,200 in the initial is not going to solve that. It's not going to solve it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't even put a Band-Aid on it, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
And I suggest to you that it doesn't have to be $1,200. I didn't see anywhere in the ordinance there was anything different about a builder being able or a developer to being able to do the development. I mean, there was minor changes to that section. I saw in the redlining of that ordinance where the Parks Board was eliminated in a lot of the decisions, and I don't understand why the Parks Board would be eliminated on decision making. I'm concerned with, and one of the, aside from the comments that I heard and I don't go to the planning and zoning meetings all the time, but I had one zoning case and I came. But part of the whole issue, Nathan Bratton, who's an attorney, was I think the chairman of the planning and zoning, and he was part of, you know, he took the lead on it.
He was a director.
He was a director, no?
No, at the time, back in 2008, he wasn't, I think he was still he was a P&Z.
Oh.
He was the chairman
Okay.
of the P&Z chairman back then. I don't think he was a director, or maybe he was part of the attorneys of the city. But anyways, I learned a new word back then, and the word was nexus. And everything that was drawn into the ordinance, there was a concern with nexus, right? In other words, because there was like, well, you can't charge a commercial development, you know, park fees because there's no nexus to the use of the parks with the business, and then also the radius for where those fees were getting charged for the facilities, that it had to be, you know, legally sound, that it was for the benefit of the people that were paying the fee. Now, the maintenance of the parks, that becomes an allocation of tax resources and a setting of priorities of where, you know, whether the tax rate is high enough or not low enough. You know, it's the policy on how much to tax and the policy on where to spend, right? And a lot of the things, all the wants, right? There's a lot of people in Laredo that are very generous. I can't understand why everything has to come directly from that consumer. why isn't there, and I said this at the last meeting, is that, you know, there should be a system to bring in donors that want to name. I remember when I first came back from college, the Kiwanis, I say Kiwanis, the Rotarios, the Rotarians.
Optimus.
Yeah, in other words, it's adopt a park back then. Just why? We really didn't have, you know, really didn't have parks and all that stuff. So the business community, keep Laredo beautiful, you know, beautify, you know, Laredo. And you have some parks over there, like from Clark, I think Clark School, I think there's one of the, that was adopted by, and I don't understand where we lost the vision, and maybe where we lost the vision was when Betty Flores became mayor, and that's when, you know, everything was all about parks. And we went from like 0 to having all these community centers around town, you know, stuff that creates a big budget. So adding more land is not solving the problem, and it's not addressing the problem. What needs to be addressed is on what are the priorities and fund the priorities. You know, and putting too much stuff in the park is not, and people want to go bike, they want to go walk, you know, they want to enjoy, you know, the sun. The young kids, we need to get them physically exhausted out there, para que no anden haciendo maldades. You know, the basketball courts and that kind of stuff. But hey, there's a bunch of businesses in town that would love to adopt a basketball court. That would, you know, I mean, if they're approached, if you make it a, you know, hey, you know, we've got these facilities. ¿Quién pone dinero? ¿Qué grupito puede, you know, poner? As opposed to, I mean, you know, $1,200 may be cheap, right, compared to other cities. But I know our demographics, we're not now the most poor city in the United States as we used to be, but compared to the cities being compared, you know, what is the income? And what percentage of their income is that $1,200 compared to other cities that are being studied? And, you know, that $1,200, that $500,000, you know, or $400,000, you know, what facilities are being placed on there? And are those facilities, you know, necessary? Or could they be funded from other sources? We need to, it's a serious issue. Inflation, affordability in Laredo, it's a serious issue. And interest rates are not going to come down as quickly as people think that they're coming. In fact, long-term rates went up. They reduced the Fed funds rate, and the long-term rates are higher.
And I was going to ask you, in your professional opinion, do parks make a big difference in the neighborhood? Your personal opinion.
In my personal opinion, from the, like, Las Misiones Park, Las Misiones. I've been recently advertising, do you want to live close to a neighborhood and all that other stuff? You want to live close to a park and all that stuff? To me, at the end of the day, it's what the family can afford. And if, you know, if one home is $5,000 more, and that means that it's an extra $75 a month for the $5,000 more, they're going to go to the one that's, you know, $75 less. Why? But that's my client.
Yeah.
And that's the one that I'm concerned with.
Correct.
You know, that's the lifeblood of Laredo. I mean, if you look at the number of permits on the north side compared to the south side, why? Because of density, affordability, and all that stuff. There's a lot more permits in the south side. I mean, we're not, you know, people in Laredo are not making 120 grand a year, que nomás andan gastando. I mean, you know, everybody's complaining about all the costs. I mean, you know, it doesn't matter whether you have money or don't have money, people are complaining. Yeah, no, people are complaining, and you feel it. I mean, you feel it, and you know, we're stripping the families an opportunity to build their wealth. And it's a pattern. It's a pattern that I see. I saw it like about 5 or 6 years ago when they changed the fees for water and sewer. When that fee changed, al año, 2 años, all the lots went up 20 grand. Why did the lots go up 20 grand? Because if you multiply the $3,000 fee and the density, it's about $18,000 per acre, right? So what's happened? Now all of a sudden it's $18,000 more. All of a sudden the lots, your replacement cost is much higher. And a lot of that stuff is, all the thought process is upfront fees, upfront fees, upfront fees. And what's happening is you have the affordability triangle. The higher the price, the less people that qualify. Right? Lower the price, more people qualify. Lower the price, more people qualify. So the higher the price, the less people that qualify. And that's where we're at today. I mean, I said this at council several years back. I said, we're living in false economy. The interest rates that we have today are false. I said, we need to be careful because all of a sudden we're going to go back to a normal 6-7% interest rate. And what happens? Now, you know, people don't want to, you know, the only ones that are buying homes are the ones that absolutely are transitioning from moving from their household. In other words, people are not moving from one house to build a bigger house because the interest rates are too high, or the interest rates are normal. So now everything is, you know, what's real as far as the interest rates are concerned, that, you know, it's been a shocker. It's a shocker to the consumer. Yes, the sizes of the homes have come down, but still people don't move out, right? If you have $100,000 equity in your home and you're going to buy, you know, another home, which is going to cost you, you know, you're going to eat up your equity.
You're supposed to stay in your house.
Yeah, you're going to eat up your equity, and then you're going to double your mortgage payment. So you don't move.
Yeah.
I mean, that's you know, so I think timing is horrible. Just to start there, timing is horrible, just because of the, you know, the situation that we're in. And, you know, what I'm hearing is a maintenance and operation issue. And I'm hearing the same thing that I heard back then, which is a lot of amenities that are wants, that are being funded up front, reducing the accessibility to housing, as opposed to finding different ways of addressing beyond the basic needs. And the basic needs is to go out there and fly a kite. Así le decía Mr. Pescador. Every time I see him, hey, Mr. Pescador, you know, you can tell him, ¿Qué te dice? Let's go fly a kite. Because I say to race, you know, because, I mean, we went through this ordinance ad nauseum. And I saw Mr. Martinez, I couldn't remember his name, and I saw him voting. I think he was one of the poll watchers out there. They went, ad nauseum, you know. So there's a lot, I think, you know, I don't know how much you got into the weeds on looking at the ordinance itself, but you need to get into the weeds and ask the questions that, like what I saw was, you know, this issue of nexus, has it been vetted? You know, less reliance on the Parks Board, which I think, you know, staff should have a sounding board on all the decisions. And it seems like the Parks Board was stripped in this decision making. So, not to say the staff isn't, you know, qualified or whatever, but, you know, the people that are that are, the constituents should have a voice on those, on decisions. Stripping a park, like when the whole deal got put together, there was a consensus that parks should be close to schools, and it was automatic. In other words, if you had a school there, it was automatic that the developer could say, "Hey, right next to the school, let's put a park there." Does it make sense? Now you can have interlocal or governmental, stuff. Maybe they can adopt it or whatever. And now they strip that from the ordinance. I saw some confusing stuff. I guess trying to address the issue of, and maybe we didn't address it clearly enough. But I thought that maybe this whole issue of there was an issue of grandfathering prior plats, right? That already had the parks ordinance in there. If there was already a dedication and all that stuff, that was part of the deal. But when the whole ordinance, and maybe I'm mistaken, but when the whole ordinance was placed, and I've had that issue before at Aquero, was that we had a number of, amount of acreage and how many households it was supposed to serve. And if somebody came in with a new development, let's say you converted B1 and you use residential without changing the zone, that there was a mechanism to go back and say, okay, well, you only had enough for 100 households, and now you have 200, so you have to pay the fee or put the improvements in the development. So I thought that was covered in here in this ordinance, just based on listening to the comments. I didn't understand, this lengthening of the time, or like, not to get into specific subdivisions, but I thought stuff was supposed to get done within 18 months, even if you had a postponement. There was some stuff in the ordinance as I was going through it where they didn't carry over correctly the previous ordinance. So you can't see really the red line correctly, or some stuff was, a few things were missed from the standpoint of looking at it as a red line, right? I saw that as I was going through the deal. I thought some things were very harsh as I went through the deal. But the most important thing is, what's going into the park, what are the essentials, make sure we have the essentials, and that the ordinance cover the essentials, and then anything outside of an essential needs to be addressed through the taxing, people, contributing, and take into consideration what the impact is now, because the densities are higher. So they haven't been losing money because the density has been getting higher. So they've been getting, more money throughout the year, and most of the developments now, have, greater than five density. Back then, I guess it was like 4 density. And, doing this surcharge, I don't see how that can address more money or less monies, because it's supposed to be based on population and serving the population. So if you have fewer lots, then you're going to have less acreage, right? Because you're addressing it from and you're going to pay a less fee, right? Or they're going to collect less fees because there's less acreage required.
Yeah.
So that doesn't address it. What addresses it is, the level of service, and, I'm concerned about this 1.5 acres. I'm concerned that there's a gap, that there's gaps. And the only thing that I can think of in gaps as the new developments come in is because there's been a fee in lieu. And what does that do? Because it creates a gap.
Yeah.
So in other words, that I think, and that's part of the cities, and now we're taxing the new guys up front. I don't think it's a good policy.
Well, thank you so much, and like I said, we appreciate you being here, and like I said, when, this committee was put together, we definitely wanted to get the input of the developers and the builders, and you definitely, shed some light on some of the stuff that we need to look into, and, like I said, thank you for being here, and like I said, everything that you said, we're recording it, and we're definitely going to go back to the notes, and there's some real good stuff in there that we're gonna take a look at.
And I appreciate that, and I'll tell you that, to have a good ordinance, in my opinion, is, even if it takes a little bit more time, is that every time there's a meeting, okay, let's talk about the wording on the ordinance. Talk about the wording on the ordinance, talk about the wording on the ordinance. So none of the two presentations that I've been, has not been a discussion on the wording of the actual wording in the ordinance. Okay, why is this being deleted? Why is this being added? Does this make sense? It's all been about money and not about all the redlining. So I'm concerned about the redlining. I've been part of, changing ordinances, in different committees, coming up with the parks was a brand new ordinance, and it's always been, okay, well, what's, let's look at, what it says, let's look at what it says, what is it supposed to mean, is it what we wrote, is it really conveying what, what the intent, what the intent is? And I'm concerned that that's not happening here. And I feel bad that more of the developers are not here, or maybe they feel like, coming here is not gonna help.
No, and that's actually why we're meeting today. It's a start, Mr. Ruiz, to your point, you brought up some good valid points, and we can go back and we can obviously consider. So that in essence, and to echo Mr. Martinez's remarks, is that very appreciative in you being here and raising your voice to this issue with the Parkland ordinance. We are taking all of this information into account, something that we do have to evaluate. I've also personally said that the recommendation, not only that this committee, this subcommittee sends over to the city, is on this particular ordinance, but it's also should be that a recommendation of an alternative source of funding from the city to the Parks Department. You said it. You said in your words that it's only, it wouldn't make a dent as to the
Yeah,
amount
the
that,
$1,200 doesn't solve the issue.
correct. It
doesn't
won't
solve
solve.
the issue.
It won't
It
solve
doesn't
the
solve the
issue.
issue of the wants. I think a lower fee solves the issue of the needs.
Correct.
So if we have wants, they should be sourced, through other sources, not, impact the first guy buying in there because we're keeping them from an opportunity to build wealth.
Right.
Not because I'm in building homes, but it's, if you look at people's net worth, the majority of the people, have their house is their highest, and then some, with the help of their employers and all that other stuff, they have their 401ks, if they didn't tap into them and that kind of stuff, but really the main people have their net worth in their real estate, in their homes.
And I'm not gonna put you on the spot, but maybe I will.
Go
You're
ahead.
not speaking on behalf of all, you're not speaking on behalf of all the, what would you think is a fair increase?
I'd like to see what, before I answer that question, I'd like to address, like we did at the committee, is what are the amenities that are gonna be included in there? That are the basic amenities, the needed amenities, for people to be able to fly a kite, people to be able to go jogging or walking, enjoy the fresh air. When I think of a park, I think of a place, I might sit on a bench, you know, maybe I get there early, or maybe I get there right before the sun, you know, comes up, or before the sun, I'm not a park user, but, you know, I think of, the times that I've gone to the beach, right? You're just sitting in there, and it's like, okay, I wanna remember the sound of the water. Or I'm sitting out there, and it's like, you know, I want to feel the sand on my toes, you know, or I get in there, no voy a pegar a jellyfish. In other words, that's what I see as far as a park. You know, there's a place to go, and it's safe. You know, you don't have any rape zones, you don't have any, you know, any zones out there that, you know, can, malindrino or whatever the term is, you know, you want a place where you can be safe. You know, nowadays, you know, it's, our children don't have children, they have pets. You know, so maybe now it's a, you know, a little place there where, you know, it's fenced off, and, you know, maybe for some,
There's dog parks, yeah.
yeah, some areas for, you know, for the new children, the pets, right? They're people's, and I mean, you can't even, I know with some of my relatives, you know, you say anything about their pets, y nombre, they get lynched. You know, so that's what I see. In other words, if you ask me to give you a number, I want to know what's in the specifications, and I said this last time. In other words, the specifications are going to dictate the number, and that's.
And basing off on, and
I haven't seen that.
basing off on community needs, for example, we have in Laredo, we only have a set of pickleball courts. They're in West Laredo, they're by the Lafayette Bridge. And I know that currently right now in the proposal, it's for the new set to be built in the Divine Mercy Parkland.
Mercy Park.
So that's currently also in the works, and that's a 9-court, 6-court?
Six.
6 court.
6-court with an estimated cost of 800?
No. I think it's like, between 250 and 350.
Oh, 253.
But that depends on the future plans for the parking lot.
Correct. Well, as
Without the parking lot.
to the point that I'm getting to is that these new amenities that Laredo didn't have before are now dog park. You said it best as to how now more and more dog parks are coming up. The amenities that include dog parks, the pickleball courts, improvement to some of our existing parks as well. For example, the market tennis courts. I know that it was proposed in this year's budget, but it is something that has also been, it's often utilized. You look at, it's in the Heights area, it's on Market
I'm
Street.
not familiar.
You know,
I went to Heights.
So the
I don't know.
the market tennis courts are still very much utilized, and we have no doubt they're gonna continue to be utilized, even though after the Tommy U courts get built, even though, the other courts that exist in part of town, aside from the future South Laredo Sports Complex. So the parks amenities and the people are gonna continue to use their parks, they're gonna continue to benefit from these parks. But at the same time, it's also part of the beautification process to get there eventually. So we thank you, Mr. Ruiz, and for your remarks. And we are going to take all of this into consideration, going back and reviewing this, and then also giving it ample time that the others also get to chime in, as you did as well. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you so
for being
much.
here.
We appreciate it. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I'll be at every meeting.
Thank you. And with that being said, staff, thank you so much for all your hard work and putting everything into this. I know that it's a lot of work, and you all do put in, we see it on the committee, you all do put in the hard work, and it's very appreciative. And like I said, parks are a major part of a community, and that's what builds a community. And my thing is just to kind of piggyback off of what Mr. Reese says, is you want a place where your kids are safe. You want a place where it's lit up. You want a place where, hey, you know what, my wife and the kids are at the park, I'm gonna go meet them there because I'm at this meeting or what have you, but you know they're safe, and you all have been doing such a great job with that. With that being said, there's no other comments. I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Yep,
Second.
second, favor? Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you
We're
so much,
adjourned.
Mr. Reese.